was writing the plan for last night, and I see it as the priority of the district right now. It will take my priority, it will take my time. These goals, many of the board goals, interestingly enough, fall kind of in between. Are they board or administrator goals already? And some of them are already going to be done. For example, in some cases, my goals are making sure that they get done, not necessarily that I'm the one physically doing it. I'm not going to blog about the one-to-one initiative. Well, I may blog about it, but I'm not going to be the regular communicator about that. Paul Irish is going to be the regular communicator about that. I am working with other administrators around the facilities retreat. It's unfortunate we won't have Chris here to help see that through, so that could cause some problems in completing it, because I'm not a facilities director. I need to have a facilities director providing that information to ITC. Some of these goals, do spill over to last night's plan. Clearly, the third goal about the strategic plan for an inclusive and equitable district spills over to last night exactly. And for me right there, it's just simply a conversation with the board, given that I now have put out the plan as I explained last night, and the board has a goal of putting out a plan. How do those two things merge? And that takes a conversation with the board. It's not something else I can do unless the board wishes to, either adopt that one or expand upon it. And, so I don't particularly know that one. So where the first goal, the Nellie Mae work, is largely around the work of the Nellie Mae Steering Committee and ensuring that that's going forward. I already reported to you that Amy Mellencamp and I met a week ago with somebody who can help work on a community forum, appreciative inquiry type summit to help make that happen. But I won't be able to do that alone. It's not me alone. The curriculum mapping is not me alone. It's me making sure that it happens and bring it back to you. Munis software, I'm not actually going to be the person implementing it. It's making sure that it happens. But there are some of these, that's where my administrative team comes in, and I'm responsible to you for either making sure it happens or identifying for you the barriers in its happening. And my number one priority will be the diversity and equity plan.
Commissioner Evans?
Sorry, that would mean what?
Setting up meetings or whatnot.
No, I don't see it as setting up meetings. We talked a little bit about this last night when it was asked about the role of KSE through the Nellie Mae grant. And, as I said last night, I sometimes don't know if I'm supposed to tweet or Facebook or web or press release or, what it is exactly that I'm supposed to do. And I'm not trained in communications. We don't have somebody in this district who is trained in communications. As I participated in this goal and as it's written, many of us, board members, administrators, and teachers, have been very frustrated that so much of what is good and bad, but especially what is good in the district, is not noticed. Instead, controversy gets written up on, and other than Claude, the 10 things that happened last week is not really noticed. And how do we get and this was a budget time discussion as well. How do we get people to know what is happening in the classroom? What student outcomes are occurring? So when I talk about seeking resources, I think it's some frank and honest conversations with the board and the community about, do we need some specific communication support finally in this district, or do we continue to work within the resources we have, which is right now my working with one of our administrative assistants on top of her already full job to get the word out. Spotlight, for example, is an excellent internal communications method, and it is available on the web. We don't mail it out, but it's very time intensive to put together. It takes a person a full day, if not more, every other week. So
yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and I think maybe I didn't make myself clear in terms of not the social media part and getting it out there, but the communications with teachers, with principals, or among themselves, is that, maybe it's not in that specific goal, but is there, some sort of plan to start to hear teachers' voices? Because that's what a fear of a lot of people is, that they're not being heard, and that's not through Facebook or Twitter. I'm talking about meetings and facilities.
Well, I did talk yesterday in the diversity plan about a listening tour.
Okay.
And this year I did begin the work on the Tea with Jeannie. And that came through out of our labor management committee, and that will continue next year as an opportunity for access to me. I do feel that it's highly important that I continue to be in the schools weekly. I set aside 3 mornings a week. I get into classrooms, I talk to students, I talk to teachers. I believe, so I didn't write about it, this particular goal, but those things would continue, and we have communications, internal communications, teacher voices, in particular teacher voices, has been a topic of discussion for this year with the labor management committee. And so we put several things in place that we would like to continue. The blog is another one. So those things will continue. I did not write it in the school.
Commissioner Evans?
I wanted to respond to what you said, but the reason I raised my hand before was that I find it really confusing that there's like 4 different documents that we got last night that speak in the back, whatever it's called. The Gantt. The Gantt spreadsheet, the goals, the 5 points, and then there's another one that I don't even know if we talked about, but the sort of, it was kind of a pseudo spreadsheet that had your goals spelled out a little bit for 11, 12. It was really unwieldy for us to have to manage navigating 4 or 5
Let me
different.
tell you what you actually have, and I'm trying to accommodate different learning styles, which the board, just like classrooms, do have. You actually have 2 documents. You actually have the diversity equity report. Built within the diversity equity report is the Gantt chart already. It's built within it. I photocopied it separately yesterday for you, or put it up there separately, just because that way you could kind of enlarge it when you want to see it. That was an accommodation. But it's one report. The Gantt chart is built into the diversity equity plan. The diversity equity plan is a subset of the second goal here, where the board has a goal of developing and implementing a strategic plan. This is a PowerPoint accommodation of the handout I gave you of my goals. Again.
So, I mean, I think for myself personally as a board member, when we have our retreat after the new board comes on, my understanding of that retreat is that we're setting priorities for the district, not for the board. We're not actually the ones who are doing the work. So that's a little confusing. And, I mean, it's been very complicated knowing that you have a strategic plan with the administrators, and we've been talking about a diversity and equity strategic plan, and then there's another plan that goes with LA, and so this just to me is representing that same kind of dynamic over. I think it all needs to be
with technology. Chris on, who has left the district, but Chris on facilities. Certain things that, directors being responsible, say, for the rollout of the financial package. I think at the director level, we would like to, we feel like there's a need to make sure that we're getting effective use out of these director positions across the district. And, I think that, I don't know if there's a way of kind of incorporating that idea, because it does seem to be touched in a number of places here, but it's kind of an overall piece that I think falls in core value. And the other piece, on accountability, I think that one thing that's been noted a couple times has to do with, our recent success or non-success in, recruiting and retaining principals. It's something I know that has been discussed at times, and I guess that's sort of like one of these overarching big issues that, yes, it doesn't really fall into a board goal, but it's something that really is a baseline need for the district to have in our buildings. And that's like the one piece that I don't see directly reflected here, and I didn't see something that was directly reflected, but I saw it indirectly reflected, so I want to comment on how on certain things that I've been looking at. And then also, since really this document by reference or incorporation takes into account what you brought last night from the diversity equity side, from my view, I think I heard some comments from board members last night in particular on taking some of these diversity and equity initiatives and going beyond baseline on them and pushing ourselves